Hello and welcome to hour number 2 of the Morning After, live right here on this Tuesday all across the Sports Grid Network. Sirius XM, channel 159. That's the home for Sports Grid Radio on Sirius XM. I am Ben Stevens. A huge Tuesday in the world of sports, including in basketball on the hardwood. Winner take all. Game 3 tonight at the Barclays Center in the WNBA postseason. The opening round matchup, this first series of the playoffs between the reigning WNBA champs, the Chicago Sky, and the New York Liberty. We'll take you around the WNBA postseason to start things off here in hour number 2. The Chicago Sky were a heavy outright favorite to win this series, minus 430 before things got started. But it was the Liberty playing spoiler in that opening game of the series last week in Chicago, winning outright as a 9.5-point underdog, 98-91. But we get to game 3 because Chicago had the response on Saturday. 100-62 was that response from the Sky, the largest margin of victory in the history of the WNBA playoffs, a 38-point win, Chicago easily covering as an 8.5-point favorite. The Sky still booked as a relatively big favorite on the road tonight in Barclays Center in Brooklyn against the Liberty. 7.5 is where that spread stands right now in favor of the WNBA champs from a season ago. Technically, the shortest spread of this series, 8.5 for game 2, 9.5 for that opener in favor of Chicago. And the Sky have scored 91 points in each of the first 2 games, at least 91. 91 in the opener, 100 in game number 2. Game 1 over, game 2 under. The total tonight up slightly from where it was yesterday. 164 and a hook is now 165 and a half on this Tuesday morning on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Big Apple, big stars tonight inside the Barclays Center. For the home team, the New York Liberty, looking to pull off the upset in the series and in game number 3 at home. Sabrina Ionescu will be expected to lead the charge. Her points prop is 18.5 tonight for the New York Liberty. She only scored 7 points in game number 2, but a big performance in that opening upset in game number 1. 22 points, 7 boards, 6 assists. In fact, no Liberty starter even scored in double digits in that second game. However, Kalia Copper has been fantastic for Chicago so far this postseason. Over that points prop of 18.5 in each of the opening 2 games. 20 in game number 2 in Chicago's rout, even 21 in game number 1 in which the Sky lost to the Liberty. So look at that points prop for Copper tonight. I'm going to do some quick handicapping here if I can. I don't believe we have a team total as of yet for Chicago. But again, they've scored at least 91 points in each of the opening 2 games of this series, averaging 95.5. That might be another way to play this game. A winner-take-all game number 3 in Brooklyn tonight between the Sky and the Liberty. Chicago booked as a 7.5-point favorite. Only 6 teams remaining at this point in the hunt for a WNBA championship. The Aces quickly here. We'll flash this graphic and dive through the numbers in just a moment. Las Vegas now in odds-on favorite at minus 125 to win the WNBA title this year in 2022. A welcome to our Sports Grid Radio audience. Hour number 2 of TMA live on this Tuesday. Sirius XM, channel 159. All of our terrestrial radio affiliates now in the fold as well. I am Ben Stevens. The Aces entered with the best odds in this WNBA postseason to win a championship. Now in that minus money category after sweeping the Phoenix Mercury in their opening round series quickly in Vegas over the weekend. The Sky entered with the second best odds. They moved back following that Game 1 loss to the Liberty, now tied for the second best price alongside the Sun, both at plus 440. Seattle, a sweep of the Washington Mystics in their opening round series. They'll face off against Las Vegas, a 6-1 number. You can see what the expectation will be for that semifinal series between Vegas and Seattle. New York and Dallas round out the 6 best odds now of those remaining in the WNBA postseason. It will be Dallas at home, who forced a decisive winner-take-all Game 3 with a victory on the road in Connecticut in game number 2 on Sunday. The Wings, a 6.5-point home underdog for game number 3 tomorrow night in Dallas. The Suns still booked as that favorite, the total at 164.5. But it's not just the WNBA postseason that has us doing a hardwood handicap to open up hour number 2 of TMA on this Tuesday. The Kevin Durant sweepstakes continues this summer in the NBA offseason. A new team apparently has got into the mix out of the Western Conference. That would be the young upstart Memphis Grizzlies, who currently have the 5th best odds to win the Western Conference crown in 2022-23. 10-1 is that price on Memphis. Some reporting about KD and potentially going to the Grizz as of right now, but nothing substantial has been reported in that trade package. Of course, Memphis was the 2 seed in the Western Conference playoffs last season before ultimately falling to the Golden State Warriors in the second round of the Western Conference playoffs. We have some fun here on this Win Total Tuesday, National Football League win totals for 2022. Up next.
Sports Grid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
They play less games.
The early line.
Take a look at the top 4 seeds here in the Big Ten. They're going to play less.
Aaron Rodgers and
the morning
Russell
after.
Wilson. We saw movement in the marketplace like
Orlando
Fantasy
Magic.
sports
the Cleveland
today.
Cavaliers are a little thin as well.
Newswire.
Minus 160 favorite on the money line today for Arizona.
Pharrell coast to coast.
That's where they win cups. They win Stanley Cups over there. Give me the
Game
Penguins.
time
Kind
decisions.
of bizarre when you consider everybody is out for the Warriors.
In-game live
I
all
like
access.
I like Vandy against Bama. I think Vandy can win the game, take a 4.5.
In-game live. Prime time.
The PGA champion.
In-game live. Overtime.
done before the final bet.
Get the winning edge. Only on Sports Grid. The morning after.
Are you concerned at all for what this means for Tom at the age of 45, entering his 23rd year?
Definitely not concerned. I think it's something to contemplate, but I think it's something where when you've been doing this so long, you're a veteran now of television. If Ben Stevens takes a week off, Ben Stevens is going to show up and do his job. Now, magnify that times 20 plus, right? And that's Tom Brady.
The Sports Grid Network. Pharrell coast to coast.
I mean, honestly, between Davis and Diggs, I mean, they are lethal. I mean, between Josh Allen having that choice, and he goes to Davis a lot, and he's got to get on his targets. But between the two of them, I mean, honestly, it's almost like good luck trying to stop that offense. They are very dangerous.
The Sports Grid Network.
Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports with your Sports News Minute. Remember we talked about how important it is for Major League Baseball to capture the fan experience and make sure they love the baseball game while at the park. Well, here's another example of loving a game when you're at the park. But how about golf? An 11,000 square foot simulation experience at American Family Field in Milwaukee by a golf company to get people interested in taking practice swings, to get a golf simulator used like every other golf simulator, pace, height, distance, all of those issues, but you can do it while the Brewers are playing. And you can even do it when the Brewers on the road. This will be open and available for other kinds of events as well. If this goes well, watch for all other baseball stadiums in the country to take notice in some context. Clearly, fan engagement a top priority.
going to have some fun on this Win Total Tuesday, live right here on the morning after on Sports Grid. Sirius XM, channel 159. That's the home for Sports Grid Radio on Sirius XM. All across the Spiz Grizz network. That's Sports Grid. I am Ben Stevens. Looking at a couple of the divisions in the NFC, where there's an odds-on favorite to win said divisional crown, putting up their win total against the two bottom-tier teams in that division, adding up the two win totals for the two worst teams, if you will, against the best in the division. Let's start for the North. Game of Thrones is back in our live in some kind of way. So we go to the Green Bay Packers, the champions of the NFC North for the past 3 seasons, against the teams with the lowest win totals in the NFC North, the Lions and the Bears. Now, of course, you can do the quick math like me. The over has the juice for all 3 of these win totals this year. If you were to add the Lions and the Bears, that combined win total would be 12, a full game and a half ahead of the Green Bay Packers. They would be the favored side. But who's going to end up winning more games? Let's look at history and let them tell us that. Because the Green Bay Packers, like I mentioned, have dominated the NFC North. The Packers have won this division 3 consecutive seasons, and in each of those 3 seasons, winning a divisional title, the Green Bay Packers have won 13 games. Maybe that's correlated, not just over minus 160 to the 10.5 win total, but an alternate win total of 12.5 over for the Green Bay Packers. That is why Green Bay is favored at minus 155, substantially in that odds-on favorite category to win the NFC North for a 4th straight year. But let's focus on the Lions and the Bears, because maybe they can go over those modest win totals to add up with one another to surpass the total win total for the Green Bay Packers. Let's dive into the history for the Detroit Lions, because it's rather fascinating. It should not surprise anybody to know that Detroit has gone under 6.5 wins in 4 straight years. They only won 3 games a season ago. But when Matthew Stafford was there, when Calvin Johnson was tuning in the Motor City, the Detroit Lions went over 6.5 wins 4 straight years prior to the past 4 years, which they went under. It's the exact opposite story for Chicago. The Bears have gone over 5.5 wins 4 straight seasons, but the 4 straight years before that, consecutively under 4 straight years. The Bears even won 6 games last year, so they were over this number of 5.5 a season ago. The over has the juice heavily for both the Bears and the Lions and the Packers. So if you're asking to combine those two, I think the Lions and the Bears certainly have a better chance to combine for more wins than just the Packers as their lone entity, although Green Bay has won, again, 13 games in 3 straight years, resulting in an NFC North divisional championship 3 straight years, 8 of the last 11. We do the same exercise for the NFC South. The Green Bay Packers, minus 155 to win the NFC North. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, minus 270 to win the NFC South. It's the best odds of any team to win any division in all of the NFL this upcoming year, minus 270. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are tied for the largest win total on the board right now at 11.5. The Buffalo Bills have more juice to the over. The Bucs now slightly on the under, so technically Buffalo has the largest win total available, and that's why Buffalo is the betting favorite to have the best regular season record. But we discussed Carolina and Atlanta. When you have the Atlanta Falcons with a win total at 4.5 and the over has the juice, it's tied for the lowest on the board. The Texans have a win total of 4.5, the juice even on both sides. Carolina has that under having the juice of that 6.5 win total. They would combine for 11. Tampa Bay is at 11.5. This one is much more even in a weak NFC South division. Now, here's the interesting thing about the NFC South overall. We'll start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa last year won 13 football games, tied for the most wins in the regular season alongside Green Bay, and the Bucs were booked as a favorite in every single game a season ago. But even in the 2 years with Tom Brady in Tampa Bay, they haven't gone over 11.5 wins in both. The year they won the Super Bowl, you could say certainly the better year of the two. Tampa only won 11 games in the regular season, and they've only gone over 11.5 wins one other time since the turn of the millennium, back in 2000. Now, Tampa has dominated the NFC South outside of the New Orleans Saints. Since Tom joined the Bucs, they are 8-4 rather, straight up in the NFC South in their divisional games, and they are perfect outside of the New Orleans Saints. The Saints have had Tom's number in the regular season. They have won all 4 regular season games within divisional action since Tom Brady joined the Buccaneers. Now, the Falcons are a fascinating team, because although they are expected to have a win total of only 4.5, and the over has the juice, so maybe at best 5 wins, Atlanta still won 7 games a season ago, and it wasn't a successful year. Atlanta has only gone under 4.5 wins 4 times since the year 2000. And last year against the spread, Atlanta was 6-10-1. The Panthers were not very good a season ago. They started off a perfect 3-0. They lost 12 of the remaining 14 games straight up. And the Panthers were 3-7 against the spread, booked as an underdog a season ago. Not expected to win games and didn't really cover games either. The second worst cover percentage as an underdog in the National Football League last year. Only the Bears had a worse cover percentage when booked as a dog a season ago. The Panthers actually are tied with Chicago for the 3rd longest playoff odds in the NFC this upcoming season, also alongside the Detroit Lions. That's why the win total for Carolina is at 6.5. What does success look like for the Panthers with Baker Mayfield now as the starting quarterback? You can see the long odds within the division. Can they disrupt some of what the Bucs are hoping to do as the heavy odds-on favorites at -270, or maybe make things a little bit more difficult for other teams in the NFC? Because the Bucs are -270 to win the NFC South, and because Tampa has the largest win total in the NFC, it all leads to that path, the correlated markets, for the Buccaneers to be booked as the favorites to win an NFC championship, plus 340. We share the win total number for the Green Bay Packers and their path through their division in the NFC North. The Packers have the second best odds alongside the Rams, both of those teams at 5-1. The Rams are not in minus money, but are the favorites to win the NFC West, an expected more competitive division, with the Niners being there and the Cardinals as well. The Rams at plus 125 in the NFC West. Now, the Niners are heavily favored to make the postseason out of a wild card spot, or maybe within that own division, as are the Eagles out of the NFC East, which really leaves room, based on the odds, for one final team in the NFC. Will it be the Saints, maybe the Cardinals, or the Vikings, who now have a win total of 9.5, and the over is even on both sides, as is the case for the Cardinals at 8.5. Minnesota is an interesting team here as well from that win total perspective. Minnesota has averaged 9 wins a year over an 8-year span, which has seen the Vikings go over 9.5 wins just 3 times in those 8 years. But the Vikings have never finished with less than 7 wins in this 8-year span. And for Minnesota last year, 14 of their first 15 games were decided by a single score. I think New Orleans, the Saints, having even money to the over of that 8.5 win total is one of my favorite bets this season. They have gone over 8.5 wins 5 straight years, a playoff team in 4 of those 5 years. Only last year did New Orleans not make the postseason. I love the Saints over of that win total at 8.5. We go back to college football, getting you hyped for week 0 up next on the Morning After.
Your heart's racing. The clock's running out. It all comes down to this. We're talking pregame. 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 Get locked in with Game Time Decisions. Your hosts, Gabe Morency and Cam Stewart, will get you ready for game time. Everything you need to know before a game goes off the board, with the bet slips to back it up. Make your best bet with live odds updates, late breaking news, up-to-the-minute injury reports, and real-time analytics from inside the sportsbooks. All the odds, all the action, from sports wagering insiders and industry pros like Donnie Rightside, Gam Lou, Cousin Sal, the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, and more. Get the winning edge every weekday afternoon from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern, 3 to 4 Pacific. It's Game Time Decisions. Only on Sports Grid.
You might be the next daily fantasy millionaire. No matter what you watch or where you play, learn from the world's best DFS players. Lineup building tools, expert projections, and advanced stats change the way you play the game. Dominate the competition. DailyRoto.com, the player's choice.
Fantasy Sports Today.
The running back that appears to make the biggest jump maybe in the last 2 months, maybe in all of fantasy, honestly, Davis, is Dameon Pierce, who played for the University of Florida. And the beef that went on at Florida, Davis, is that people wanted to see him get the ball more. He really was never a primary running back at Florida. He's sort of a throwback guy in the sense that you give him the ball, he's never going to lose yards.
The Sports Grid Network. The morning after.
How are you targeting, Tom, the start for Sonny Gray today against the Rangers?
And that has me going to the over on 5.5 strikeouts. It's only sitting at minus 108. For the season, Sonny Gray has a 24.3% strikeout rate, but in 4 of his last 5 starts, he has been over that rate on a game-by-game basis, really boosting up that strikeout rate, which is good to see. The Rangers are a favorable matchup. They have a 23.5% strikeout rate versus righties, which is the 8th worst in the league. He's coming off of a 10 strikeout performance in his most recent start.
The Sports Grid Network. Pharrell, coast to coast.
I mean, honestly, between Davis and Diggs, I mean, they are lethal. I mean, between Josh Allen having that choice, and he goes to Davis a lot, and he's got to get Stephon his targets. But between the two of them, I mean, honestly, it's almost like good luck trying to stop that offense. They are very dangerous.
The Sports Grid Network.
Four days away from the start of a 2022 college football season. Week 0 kicks us off on Saturday. We are so close to the start of CFB this upcoming season. Welcome back to the morning after, live here on this Tuesday, where it is never too early to look at those lines that we've had available for a good portion of this offseason for Week 0 and what, if anything, they might tell us for the rest of the college football campaign. Helping us do that, live on this Tuesday on TMA, it is Mark Zinno, who has been here over the summer talking baseball, some NFL leans as well. But I know Mark Zinno first and foremost as a college football aficionado, so it is a great time to be talking CFB once again.
Ben, it is great to be here. We are oh so close, as you said, and we're just going to go right across the pond there. Sorry, I couldn't resist. All right, now I'm done. I promise, no more accents. But we're getting ready, man. I'm excited.
I mean, every time I say Dublin to mention Aviva Stadium for Northwestern in Nebraska, I throw a little twang on there as well. And that is going to be where we start. It is the marquee matchup for Week 0, although I love a lot of games across the slate, but it's one of the first games of the day, an Irish opener, a Dublin debut for a Big Ten battle between Northwestern and Nebraska. And Zinno, you've been following this line all off season long, and even on this Tuesday morning, some live movement here on the FanDuel Sportsbook. What was 12.5 for the better portion of the last 2.5 weeks is now nearly 2 touchdowns in favor of the Huskers. I see it live at 13.5, the favorite point spread in favor of Nebraska, with an over-under at 50.5. It's nearly 2 touchdowns, Zinno. Who do you think covers that spread?
Well, I should really defer to you as Big Ten Ben here. I mean, this isn't the Mouth in the South specialty, but that said, you missed a good number with Nebraska. You can't bet it now. I think you're chasing. I think it's a bad idea to bet this thing at 12.5 or 13, especially when it opened as a single-digit number for Nebraska. Now, we know what happened last year. Nebraska blew out Northwestern 56-7. But this is a Nebraska offense that's in a state of flux, and you don't really know what they're going to be yet. They get a new quarterback coming in, and I question how sharp they'll be early on. But I do think more than anything that this is a place where points can be scored. And this is probably an overlean for me more than anything because I don't trust Nebraska's defense. And we know Northwestern's defense is going to be a little bit sketchy. Wouldn't shock me to see this thing go over the total. But I think you missed the boat on taking Nebraska and laying the points because the line has moved so drastically. So for me, it would be Northwestern or pass from a side perspective.
Last year, Zinno, Northwestern was a bottom 35 defense in the country. It was the first year in Evanston without Mike Hankwitz, who had been the defensive coordinator, the right-hand man of Pat Fitzgerald for a very long time. And when Northwestern won the Big Ten West in 2020, it was because of that Wildcats defense. Last year, 56-7, well over this number, which was actually very similar to the final total of that game in Lincoln a season ago that ended at 51.5 from that over-under perspective. Now, Zinno, here's the interesting thing about Nebraska. They are booked as a near 2-touchdown favorite now for the regular season opener. A Nebraska team that won a single Big Ten game a season ago. It was that blowout rout of Northwestern. A Nebraska team that only won 3 football games a season ago, has only won 6 in the last 2 years, yet the Huskers find themselves, with the second best price to win the Big Ten West Division on the FanDuel Sportsbook at plus 350, $1.80 behind the Wisconsin Badgers. So, Zinno, week 0 doesn't tell us all that much for the greater picture of a college football campaign, but it will certainly tell the tale for Nebraska in 2022. How do you evaluate the Huskers, big picture perspective, for this upcoming season?
Well, look, Nebraska's a team last year that lost 9 games, Ben, 9 games by single digits. So they were in a lot of games. They were competitive with good teams. They almost, took out Penn State for crying out loud. I mean, this is a team that should theoretically get better. You have to have some regression back to the mean in this one. It's not common for a team to lose 9 games by single digits. So from that standpoint, you would expect that they'll get some of those in their back pocket this year. Scott Frost in the hot seat. Remember what happened last year in the opener and the loss to the Illini? I would think that they would want to make a good impression, come out early, and he would be extra focused with this team going into this game because if Nebraska starts out slow, it could fall apart very quickly. But I think that they will be more competitive than people give them credit for. I'm not necessarily surprised by them having those odds to win the Big Ten.
The optimism, the offseason hype train in Lincoln always churns throughout any offseason. However, it feels a little bit more justified this year. A 3-9 football team, but all 9 losses, like Zinno said, by single digits, 4-1 against the spread when booked as an underdog. Their only non-cover, the line closed at 2.5 in favor of Michigan, and the Wolverines won late to beat Nebraska in Lincoln last year in October, 32-29. Northwestern, the longest odds in this division, 100-1. The Wildcats have actually been a champion in the Big Ten West 2 of the past 4 years. You see Illinois there, the second longest odds at 30-1. The Illini, fantastic when booked as an underdog against the number in the debut season of Brett Bielema in Champaign. It was Illinois pulling off the upset outright against Nebraska in week 0 a season ago. That game was played in Champaign, although it was originally scheduled for Dublin. They will open the year, the Illini, again week 0 in Champaign, not against a Big Ten team, but rather a Mountain West foe in Wyoming. Zinno, Illinois, a 9.5-point favorite. This spread has fluctuated right around double digits at 10 for most of this offseason. Do you have a pick for the Illini and the Cowboys?
I do, but it's not the side. It's the total. Look, this is a Nebraska offense that barely averaged 21 points a game last year. So if they're holding to that same offense, which they will, because Brett Bielema does one thing and one thing well, that is run the football. He's going to slow this and grind this tempo all the way down. They're going to run the football. They're going to play defense. So from that standpoint, if you're asking them to cover a 10-point spread, well, they can only give up one touchdown in the game if they're going to do it the way their offense plays. But let's look at the total here. And you saw the number there at under 43.5 on the screen. Even money. That's where this game goes. This is a under game, if you ask me, because Illinois won't score that much. And Wyoming, even though last year they finished with a top 80, top 85 offense in points scored per game, they did lose their best playmaker who transferred to Texas, and they have some transition going on the offense, but this is a very good Illini defense that easily can keep this team in check. When you add all that together, points should be at a premium here. If this thing goes over, it's because Wyoming scored 24 points on their own. I don't see that happening. I think this defense for Illinois is going to be very, very good again. Bielema's put his stamp on this team. I love the under in this game, Ben. That's the only way I'm going.
4.5 is the win total for the Illini. Burt and company won 5 games in his debut season a year ago, 7-2 against the spread in 9 Big Ten games a season ago. But you are not the Big Ten guy, as you said, Mark Zinno. You are the mouth in the South, and there is an SEC team in action week 0 on Saturday. Vanderbilt on the road in Hawaii off the mainland. And right now, that spread has fluctuated around a touchdown. It is under that 7-point spread, 6.5, though, in favor of the Commodores. I saw you shrug your shoulders, when I said Vanderbilt, an SEC team. Well, Vandy hasn't won a conference game in 2 straight seasons. Can they at least get started on the right foot with a non-conference tilt off the mainland?
Oh, man. I mean, this is a game where it almost seems crazy for Vanderbilt to be laying a touchdown to anybody in America at this point in time. They're not that good. And I don't expect them to be that good again this year. However, second-year head coach Clark Lee is returning a lot of pieces. It's expected that they can improve. The line doesn't do much for me, but I think given how bad Vanderbilt's defense was last year and how often points are scored against Hawaii and how often they give up points, the over is probably the play here. But, when you look at Vanderbilt from a season-long perspective, getting over the 2.5 wins seems very appetizing, but really this is the game that has to go their way if you'd like for them to get over that season total. Because, look, I had a friend of mine in the industry who was telling me, I hate betting on an over team total when I know they're going to lose their first game of the year because you're already down 1, right? Like, I mean, you're already giving yourself one less shot to do it. So this is a coin flip game. Vanderbilt gets this one. They get Elon. They have a shot to win against Northern Illinois, maybe even Missouri. Wake Forest could be something of a coin flip game with their quarterback being out. There's opportunities for Vanderbilt to do it. But if they don't get the first one here in Hawaii on the road, then that tells me that this team may struggle and not get to 3 wins once again. This is the best shot they have. They better take advantage of it. Probably too many points for me to lay with Vanderbilt's defense and an offense that still is in a situation where they're starting to grow a little bit more. So I'd look to the over and probably take Hawaii with the points.
And Zinno, you are talking to an individual in myself that has the over of Vandy's win total at 2.5. It was plus 145 when I bet it. Now it's even money. We're moving the market on Vanderbilt football for 2022. Exactly, Zinno. But we need this week a 10:30 p.m. Eastern time kick out in Hawaii. I will be up watching all of it. We need this week. I do not care if Vandy covers 6.5. Just cash the minus 250 money line outright. It's all a part of week 0. Thursday night, things like the backyard brawl are back in our lives. West Virginia and Pittsburgh. A Big Ten debut between Penn State and Purdue and West Lafayette. Zinno, college football is back. I can't wait to talk with you about it all season long. Thank you as always for your time here on The Morning After. More TMA up next.
If you want to pick like a pro, you need to be in the know. The future of sports gaming is now, and we take you inside the lines, breaking down all the action and what it means for your bet slip. Turn down the game and tune into Sports Grid Radio. Other networks talk sports talk, but we walk the walk, right up to the window. Sports Grid Radio. Listen free on the Sports Grid Radio app, iHeart, or TuneIn, or catch us on Sirius XM Sports Grid Channel 159.
Maurice Allen, 2015-2016 European Long Drive Tour Champion, 2017 World Number 1. Me personally, I keep my game face on me all the time. Especially coming out of the bunker, leaving the range, or even leaving the course. What's your story?
The morning after.
Why are you buying in on Dylan's stock for 2022?
Aaron Jones has been remarkably consistent for the Packers, and I kind of see him playing almost Alvin Kamara role in the slot, sitting about wide. And I think they're going to try and save him from taking this, ground and pound, and they're going to leave that role to A.J. Dillon to have this kind of more of a balanced approach because they need a little more consistency in their passing game. I think it helps that the Packers' offensive line is right now ranked 5th.
The Sports Grid Network. The Early Line.
Football is always so much fun because you see new players literally every single year, and the anticipation is stupendous once it gets underway. And we're really close to that. A 12:30 game overseas this weekend between Northwestern and Nebraska. And yeah, you're going to settle into Connecticut playing Utah State with a 27.5-point line. Everybody gets in the way. Big Ten, Pac-12. We cannot wait for this.
Only on Sports Grid. Fantasy Sports Today.
The running back that appears to make the biggest jump maybe in the last 2 months, maybe in all of fantasy, honestly, Davis, is Dameon Pierce, who played for the University of Florida. And the beef that went on at Florida, Davis, is that people wanted to see him get the ball more. He really was never a primary running back at Florida. He's sort of a throwback guy in the sense that you give him the ball, he's never going to lose yards.
The Sports Grid Network. Pharrell, coast to coast.
This is yet, I'm told, at least the fourth different offense that Mayfield has to learn as a professional in his 5 years. And from the very start, Pharrell, they kind of knew it. I'm told after 2 weeks, he was so dominant over Darnold. It wasn't bad, but the fact of the matter is his timing was good. I'm told a couple of the throws are a little bit high. They feel that the time will be better as these guys work together.
The Sports Grid Network.
Major League Baseball, the focus now, live here on this Tuesday as we get near the end of the show on the morning after on Sports Grid. Sirius XM, channel 159, all across the Sports Grid network. I am Ben Stevens. Of course, it is game number 2 of the Subway Series today, up in the Bronx at Yankee Stadium between the Pinstripes and the Amazons. Yesterday, it was the Yankees taking game number 1 in a very rare occasion for New York, that being the Yankees in this case. The Pinstripes were actually booked as an underdog, and a rather drastic home underdog, finishing around plus 140 on that money line. Why? Because it was Max Scherzer getting the start for Buck Showalter and company for the New York Mets, and they were minus 166 on that money line. Yet it was the Yankees with just enough getting to Scherzer, who gave up 4 earned runs for his second consecutive start. Not great performances for the Mets here as of late. And the Yankees take game number 1 of the Subway Series by a final score of 4-2. Aaron Judge back hitting long balls. His 47th home run this year, but his first bomb in the last 10 games. And Andrew Benintendi finally doing something of offensive production for the Yankees. Back-to-back games of multiple hits, back-to-back games of multiple RBIs, 2 of 3 yesterday, 2 ribbies against the Mets, and again, the Yankees win 4-2. There was a market early on, before the opening game of this 2-game set in the Subway Series, that caught my eye. It was between the Mets and the Yankees, and a third option of who would be the Subway Series winner. The Mets had the better odds, but the favored number was a split at minus 108. My thought was maybe there's value on New York, with the Mets being, in this case, a minus 166 favorite on the road in the Bronx against the Yankees, that you could have that hedging opportunity for game number 2. Well, now the Yankees are the only team that can win this Subway Series with a potential of a split today. The Pinstripes a favorite, minus 134. Frankie Montas gets the start. Now we welcome in our great baseball friend, a great baseball mind. Jack McMullen joins the show here on The Morning After, the host of the Just Baseball Media Show alongside Aram Layton, and the play-by-play voice of the Indianapolis Indians. They are in minor league ball as well. Jack, thank you for joining the show here on The Morning After, live on this Tuesday. New York baseball is our focus first and foremost. What was your reaction to the Yankees taking game 1 of the Subway Series last night, even up against Max Scherzer?
You know, let's work backwards. Started with Jonathan Loaisiga. They need to kind of piece together the closer situation. That was the thing that struck me. Of course, we can talk about Aaron Judge and, homer number 47 and all that cool stuff, but I want to talk about the setup guy that was having a down year that might turn into the closer down the stretch, because that's what, baseball is, right? It's all about the boring stuff. But listen, Clay Holmes, he was really struggling that he goes down with back spasms, right? You're looking for that new closer type. Is it Chapman? Is it Scott Efros? Is it Jonathan Loaisiga? We knew that Loaisiga could have been that guy, and it turns out that he was. So Aaron Boone said that they were going to piece that closer situation together. I was really happy to see that Jonathan Loaisiga had a bounce back outing in that regard. Now, in terms of just the game as a whole, I think Aaron Judge kind of embodies exactly what the Yankees need, and that is the home run. They live off the long ball. They live off of 2-3 long balls in any given game. Domingo Germán also put together a pretty solid outing. You need everybody to be perfect. In the starting rotation, you need Frankie Montas to be really good against the Mets. But listen, I mean, this team lives and dies by Aaron Judge, and Aaron Judge helped him out with that bomb.
And Jack, when you look at things right now, for the New York Yankees specifically, it's tough to put into context a single game in 162 of them throughout a Major League Baseball regular season. But it feels like every day the Yankees do something, a win or a loss, it feels significant. In entering the Subway Series yesterday, it was positivity for the Mets. It was negativity for the Yankees. Did last night's outcome, the win for the Pinstripes in the opening game of this Subway Series against their rival in the Mets, do anything to change your overall perspective on the Yankees at this time?
No, it did. You live there, right? Like, you are a New York person. You understand that New York lives and dies by every waking moment, every hour, every day. That is New York lifestyle. It bleeds into the Yankees. It doesn't necessarily bleed into the Mets, because the Mets historically have not been held to the standard that is set by the New York Yankees in the city of New York. The Yankees, it will always feel like the sky is falling when they lose. It will always feel like they are on the top of the baseball kingdom when they win. Last night felt like they were on top of the world. Tonight, it may feel like the sky is falling. Oh, if we can't beat the Mets at Yankee Stadium, what's going to happen to us, right? How are we going to survive in the postseason? Remember that baseball is 162 games long for everybody's season. New York, I feel like the collective blood pressure of Yankee fans is just through the roof. The entirety of April 1 until the end of October, beginning of November. I don't think this changes much for the Yankees. If it does, I think that people are partaking in a bit of overreaction theater.
And the blood pressure is going to be sky high today when they watch the newly acquired Frankie Montas, who frankly, in Pinstripes, has been awful. 14 earned runs allowed in 3 starts as a member of the New York Yankees. Yet the Yanks booked as a home favorite today, Jack, in the second of the 2 in the Subway Series set, minus 134 on that money line for the Yankees. Jack, what would you like to see out of Frankie Montas in his 4th start now in Pinstripes?
I would like to see what Jordan Montgomery did last night. I'm sorry, Yankee fans. I would like to see a Maddox. I would like to see a 99-pitch complete game from Frankie Montas. I'm sure Yankee fans are really upset that they decided to swap Montgomery for Harrison Bader. Bader hasn't played yet. Frankie Montas is one of the more talented pitchers in Major League Baseball. Was he dealing with a shoulder thing in the early to middle goings of this year? Yes, he was. What I would like to see from Frankie is him accumulate the strikeouts, because that is the exciting thing that can get Yankee fans back on board with Frankie Montas. We have seen a subdued arsenal from Frankie Montas. And by that, I mean that the fastball isn't as lively as it was billed to be. The breaking pitches aren't as sharp and biting as they were billed to be. And that might be a byproduct of him dealing with shoulder issues earlier this year. I would like to see a healthy Frankie Montas. I would like to see lively stuff. And if he can rack up 7 or 8 punch-outs over 5 innings, I think that Yankee fans are going to be encouraged, and the blood pressure, again, can come down a little bit. And you can say, you know what? We traded for a frontline guy. We might have a frontline guy here.
Jack, are you ready for your weekly update in the American League Central, where I ask you to make a pick based on what we have seen in this division every time you are on? Are you ready?
Yes, I'm so ready.
Okay, good. Because right now, the Cleveland Guardians maintain a 2-game lead over the Twins, 3 games up on the Chicago White Sox. And Cleveland remains the betting favorite on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Jack, it's been about 2 weeks since you were last here. Who wins the American League Central?
Yeah, I recently had a change of heart here, and it's the Cleveland Guardians. I think that the Guardians are going to win the American League Central. I think that what they do in terms of offensive depth, I know we talked about that with Houston a couple weeks ago. I think that Cleveland runs out an incredibly deep lineup. I also think that they run out a very solid front 3 in that rotation with Shane Bieber, Tristan McKenzie, and Cal Quantrill. Emmanuel Clase, maybe not named Edwin Diaz, is the best closer in baseball right now. He is certainly number 2. But one guy in that setup role is back. James Karinchak has kind of been a hot button topic in baseball since 2021. You know, he was one that, hey, the spider tag crackdown happened. Then he sees a massive regression in his numbers. Is there a correlation here? I'm not quite sure. But what James Karinchak has done so far this year, over 20-ish appearances, has been otherworldly. He's throwing to a sub 1.5 ERA. So if you can shorten the game to 7 innings, using that starting rotation, using that offense, and you can run out James Karinchak in the 8th, Emmanuel Clase in the 9th, I think the game's over. It kind of feels like what Kansas City did in 2015, where the starters just needed to go 6 innings. And then you turned it over to, and these might be deep cut names, Kelvin Herrera in the 7th, Wade Davis in the 8th, Greg Holland in the 9th. The game was over. If you had the lead, the Royals won the game. That feels like what Cleveland can do. You will also like this, being a college basketball guy. On yesterday's show, I compared Stephen Kwan, their leadoff man, to Tyler Ulis, the former Kentucky point guard, because what they do is not sexy, but it's perfect. Tyler Ulis was the perfect point guard. Assist to turnover ratio is phenomenal. He didn't make mistakes. Stephen Kwan does not make mistakes on the baseball field.
I also love Stephen Kwan. I covered Stephen Kwan when he was a member of the Oregon State Beavers at the College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska. Huge college baseball guy as well, Jack. And the Guardians on the road today, an underdog in San Diego. What is fascinating to me, Jack, about this time of year is we can look at toughest remaining schedule. How many more games do you have against divisional foes? And what does that set up like down this home stretch? The Twins, as I mentioned, 2 games behind Cleveland. The Guardians starting to separate in the odds board in minus money now. But the Twins have 17 games remaining against the Guardians and the White Sox. So, Jack, when you look at the stretch in the toughest path to an American League Central, how do you evaluate the rest of this division?
You know, I don't necessarily think that Minnesota has the pitching depth to survive the Guardians' offense and the White Sox offense to a degree, but for the most part, the Guardians' offense. The beauty of the Twins' case is when they're seeing Cleveland and the White Sox, these are 2 teams compared to the other teams in baseball, compared to the other 28 teams. They swing early, they swing often. They don't walk very often. The White Sox swing and miss at pitches out of the zone. The Guardians do not. The Guardians don't see a lot of pitches typically, so that allows opposing starters to go deep into games. I think that Minnesota, you know, you could have some starting pitchers go deep into games against these guys, but it's going to be hard, man. I mean, these are 2 tiring offenses to see. It's not Detroit. The White Sox are still running out Eloy Jimenez and Andrew Vaughn. The Guardians are still running out Jose Ramirez. Every at-bat is a high-stress at-bat. I just don't think that Minnesota has the pitching depth to get through those two offenses as often as they need to over the next 5 weeks.
It could be a blessing or a curse. You could take the glass half full perspective and think the Twins have so many opportunities to beat up on the American League Central to get back on top, or it's going to be tough against their own division to make that move. Quickly here, Jack. A pitcher's duel we expect tonight at Dodger Stadium. Tony Gonsolin for the Dodgers, Corbin Burnes for the Brewers. What's your approach to this matchup?
That's hard. Man, I would say under, but 7 is a really low number. So I am not a betting inclined person. I like looking at this type of stuff and running with it just from a matchup perspective. I think that Corbin Burnes will get the better of Tony Gonsolin. If there was one thing on that board that I would touch, it would probably be money line for the Brewers.
The Brewers shut out the Dodgers yesterday, the first time LA has been shut out at home all year long. Jack McMullen, one of the best and brightest baseball minds I know. Thank you as always for your time. We round out the show up next.
Sports Grid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
They play less games.
The early line.
Take a look at the top 4 seeds here in the Big Ten. They're going to play less.
Rodgers and
the morning
Russell
after.
Wilson. We saw movement in the marketplace like
Orlando
Fantasy
Magic.
sports
the
today.
Cleveland Cavaliers are a little thin as well.
Newswire.
Minus 160 favorite on the money line today for Arizona.
Pharrell coast to
CBG,
coast.
that's where they win cups. They win Stanley Cups over there. Give me the
Game
Penguins.
time
Kind of
decisions.
bizarre when you consider everybody is out for the Warriors.
In-game live
I
all
like
access.
Vandy. I like Vandy against Bama. I think Vandy can win the game, take it 4.5.
In-game live, prime time. In-game live, overtime.
All done before the final bet.
Get the winning edge. Only on Sports Grid. The early line.
Kenny Pickett being viewed as the guy in the room with the highest ceiling should not be much of a debate. They ran to go sign Mitchell Trubisky. They offered up an idea that Mason Rudolph was their favorite quarterback in the sport for so long, yet drafted Pickett. But it did not seem like they were going to give Kenny Pickett any legitimate chance to win this job.
Only on Sports Grid. The morning after.
Are you concerned at all for what this means for Tom at the age of 45, entering his 23rd year?
Definitely not concerned. I think it's something to contemplate, but I think it's something where when you've been doing this so long, you're a veteran now of television. If Ben Stevens takes a week off, Ben Stevens is going to show up and do his job. Now, magnify that times 20 plus, right? And that's Tom Brady.
The Sports Grid Network.
Sports Professor Rick Horrow with your Sports News Minute. Well, Ontario was bottled up as far as gambling was concerned for the last 5 years. Of course, the 2018 Supreme Court decision had no impact on Canadian provinces, but it did allow the NFL and other sports to morph in a very aggressive expansion mode as Ontario and other provinces sat, BetMGM and others moved forward. Finally, before the NFL season, BetMGM becomes the official partner of NFL betting in Canada. And so the whole idea of generating significant revenue across the border doesn't impact CFL dollars and the Ontario mobile betting there, but it does significantly affect how the NFL Canada is deployed. What does this do as far as other international NFL games long term, Germany, London, Mexico, and the like? Well, it certainly sets a precedent. Look out for some significant dollars to flow into this process like always.
Closing out our 2 hours together here, live on the morning after on this Tuesday, all across Sports Grid. Sirius XM, channel 159. That's the home for Sports Grid Radio on Sirius XM. All across the Spiz Grizz network, that's Sports Grid. I am Ben Stevens. What didn't we hit on in the world of sports today? All things NFL, the closing of week 2 in the preseason. We look forward to week 3 and the rest of the regular season in the National Football League as well. We are just 4 days away. I was holding a pen. 4 days away from the start of a college football season. Week 0 on Saturday. All around the bigs in Major League Baseball. And as we started hour number 2, it's how we end the show. A best bet for WNBA postseason action in the other borough from us here in Manhattan, in Brooklyn tonight at the Barclays Center. A winner-take-all Game 3 between the reigning WNBA champs, the Chicago Sky, and the New York Liberty, looking to pull off the first round and Game 3 upset. Before we say farewell, before we say goodbye, it's time for a WNBA playoff best bet. It is time for Bye Bye Bye. The Sky right now, a 7.5-point road favorite against New York on the Liberty's home floor tonight. Again, Chicago was a minus 430 series outright favorite before this opening round series got started. But the Liberty shocked the world in Chicago last week, taking Game 1 outright as a 9.5-point underdog. But even in Game 1, Kahleah Copper was sensational, 21 points for Chicago. And then in Game 2, Copper backed it up with 20 more big ones, going over 18.5 for her points prop tonight in each of the opening 2 games of this series. If Chicago is going to win a decisive Game 3 on the road in New York, Copper and her outstanding offensive performance will be a reason why. Over 18.5 points. The morning after, each and every weekday, live right here on Sports Grid. It starts at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm Ben Stevens. We'll talk tomorrow.